Got it.
Got it.
Maybe I should have done this a minute earlier. Here we are. Yay. Well, okay. Are we live? Got it. Oh, yes, we're live. I'm going to turn that off because so I just had to click on, but yes, we are live. Okay, so here we are. So kick us off, Sal.
Party on, guys.
Party on.
Rock on.
Rock on.
Welcome POJCasters to our live.
Okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Technicalities. Via YouTube. This is the Angel of Death, Reverend Sal Marco, a hospice chaplain in the Presbytery of the Highlands, PCUSA.
Here.
In the validated ministry.
Oh, you always need to be validated. We know that about you, Sal.
Yes, that is right.
And I am the Rock and Reverend, forgot my own name, Rock and Reverend Todd Laddick, who is an ordained elder in the United Methodist Church of Greater New Jersey, serving on higher ground from my former brother, serving on higher ground from where my brother was formerly employed.
That's right.
That was a mouthful.
And I am Reverend Chris Doyle. I'm pastor at Berkshire Valley and Oak Ridge Presbyterian Churches, and here in the Highlands of New Jersey, and loving the fall colors, which are just absolutely amazing this year.
I love that you call it the Highlands of New Jersey rather than the Skylands of New Jersey, because amen. Yeah. I'm unfortunately in the Skylands district, but I didn't name it. So yes, today we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of stuff. We'll basically run through our normal format, which is we'll go through what we're drinking, what we're listening to or watching. Basically, that will be the main thing we talk about, is just all things Halloween and what spooks us. So in the meantime, before I do that, and I'll keep talking because who likes to listen to dead silence, but I got to make.
And he's frozen.
And I'm frozen. And I'm back.
And you're back.
I'm back. Cool. So I love freezing. So you guys fill in the dead silence, but while I froze, you can see what I also did.
That's right.
That's a lovely mask, Todd.
Thank you. And I'm here to let you know I'm also wearing Freddie's sweater because I do live on Elm Street. So I can't permanently separate myself from Freddie for that reason. But I do get lucky enough to play Jason again at the Blairstown Masonic Lodge at their haunted hallways. It's called Sinfully Evil, which seems to go together. So yeah, I get to play Jason in Blairstown, and this is my second year doing it, and woohoo! Yay! Rock on!
Rock on.
It's really annoying talking in that, but I'll leave it like this for now.
Well, do our podcasters know that Jason was filmed near Blairstown?
That's a very good question. I am not sure if they do, and we might have to have a little Blairstown talk in this episode. But yes, Jason was born in Blairstown. Well, properly speaking, he died as a little boy in Blairstown. Technically, if you go by the story. And of course, in the first movie, we'll get to that. We won't talk about that now. But yes, that is very true. Jason was born in Blairstown. So I feel very honored to get to play Jason. So they liked it enough last year that they asked me back.
Is that where the story takes place? Is somewhere in New Jersey?
I don't know if they ever said it was in New Jersey. They may have. They definitely show signs of things in New Jersey, but it's supposed to take place at a fictitious lake called Camp Crystal Lake, but that was filmed at a lake in New Jersey, in Blairstown,
near Stokes Forest.
Right. Yeah. It's over. Actually, it's over. Let's see here. Well, we'll talk about that in a second, but yes, that is very true. So, with that said, I think that does bring us into our Hebrews segment. Though I don't know how many of you are drinking anything of a hot caffeinated brew at this hour. Maybe.
No. That
So
reminds me, guys. That reminds
that?
me. How do we know that God loves coffee?
Ooh, how, Sal?
He wrote about it, or he had someone write about it in the book of Hebrews.
Book of Hebrews.
Oh,
Every-
Sal, you need to stop. You need to stop.
This is his second time hearing it. He's already done.
A couple episodes ago, I did say I was going to stop, but I couldn't. I can't stop.
Can't
stop.
Of course you can't. Of course you can't. And I just had somebody text me saying, "Hey, where is this link?" Because I said that I would text the link to this person, and I didn't. So I am now texting that and did. So hopefully they will be joining us. This is a live episode, by the way. That means we are live, so we're interacting with people. We do want you to interact with us. I don't know about you, Sal, but I am keeping a track of my Rockin' Reverend Twitter handle and on Facebook as well. Or you could just interact with us on the YouTube video, which would be convenient for all. But either way, we're looking. So, and remember, within this hour, if you interact with us, you may have a chance to pop on and say hi, and that is a lot easier than you think. I promise. Just be clothed, please. Anyway, you have to put those reminders out. Am I wrong?
You do. You never know nowadays.
No.
You never know.
So, okay. So, who wants to go first?
I'll go first because I'm not drinking a brew. Well, I'm drinking carbonated, just a polar seltzer black cherry. The from Costco. You get like 32 for $10. It is, I think, probably the best deal you can get on seltzer around. It's actually cheaper than the Costco brand seltzer, although you get 2 less than the Costco brand, but this or that, whatever. Apples and oranges.
The flavors are probably more distinct. I myself am drinking coffee, highly caffeinated. What I do is I have the Keurig machine and I have the pods, but for each 1 cup of coffee, I have to use 2 pods because I brew them on, that little setting all the way off to the left on the machine where there's a big tall glass with ice. And so it makes it particularly strong for iced coffee. So I just do 2 of those into 1 cup and add sugar and drink.
Awesome. Sounds great. And Stel, what were you drinking again? I just had to plug my computer in because, I forgot.
Polar, that's okay. Polar seltzer from Costco.
Oh, okay. Oh, so like you're going dry.
Going dry.
I'm not. Oh boy. Yeah. Backgrounds. I have here in our Viking Vicar's honor, who could not make it with us today because it was past his bedtime, I guess, but I had to, Blake, sorry. But anyway, no, he couldn't be here today. And so you can't see this, but it is basically in his honor because he is our Viking Vicar. And this is Viking blood, which is a big black ceramic bottle that you can put on top of a stove and heat it up, though I did not do that tonight because it's not nearly cold enough to do that. But this is called mead. And Viking blood, because you'll see it has kind of a pinkish hue, and that is because it has hibiscus in it as well. So it's a honey wine. Cheers. And I'll have you know that no, I'm not drinking this whole bottle tonight because you won't even understand a word I say when I get through half of it. But I will probably pull out a beer if there's time and I have the appetite for it, and I have to follow it up. Angry Eric's H2 Ale, which happens to be, a triple brewed with honey and hibiscus. So I thought maybe that would be a neat thing to try back to back. So I'll let you know how that goes. But that sounds like Yeah. Yeah. So cheers to all of you, my brothers. Cheers. And well, that brings us into the rest of our show. But I actually really wanted to, and I'm going to try to pull it up here if I can. In fact, I know I can, because all I have to do is go to his text, and it's right there. So I'm going to actually pull up you all have been what's the word? Maybe you haven't, Chris, I'm not sure, but certainly you have, Sal, met and befriended, and we've had him on a couple times. In fact, he was at our last Halloween episode as we speak. As we speak, he was on our last episode last year. So that is, of course, none other than the Reverend Leviathan, who is our brother from Kentucky down there. And we all know his story. Well, for Chris, if you don't know his story, he basically is a Christian who identifies as goth and actually as a juggalo, if you know what a juggalo is.
I do not. Can you tell me what a juggalo is?
Yeah. So have you heard of Insane Clown Posse? The band?
For some odd reason, I think I have.
Yes. And if you haven't looked them up, you'll be intrigued. But they basically are kind of extreme hardcore underground rap that sing about like horror and murder and serial killers, kind of like the rap version of Slayer. But their fan base they call juggalos, and they usually dress with like clown makeup on or all sorts of different ways. But so he kind of has existed for a long time in both of those scenes. And being a goth and being a juggalo, he's blended the two together very, very like brilliantly. And he's also a Christian. So what he does do is he goes, he's not ordained, he's a lay person, but he goes wearing the Roman collar and like a habit or whatnot, and goes to these concerts, whether they're metal or goth or juggalo concerts, and stands there, and people come up to him like, are you for real, or is this a joke? Or he talks to them about Jesus, but not in an obnoxious way. He just tells them why he's doing it, and then they're intrigued and they ask him more questions, and the next thing you know, he's befriended so many people that way. He's gotten to know people in the underground mob style rap scene, and so he's just a really cool guy. And I thought it would be cool to plug him today because his album came out today, his new album or EP. It's a Vampire Friar, which says everything you need to know about him. And so I thought I would start us off with one song, then we could talk about whatever, and we'll close with another song just to plug his album. And I'll make sure in the meantime, at some point, I will throw that into the the notes under the YouTube page. I didn't get a chance to do that yet, but I will do that, and then I'll throw it into our chat section as well, so people can go and check him out. You can listen to the album for free, but do consider purchasing his album and supporting him. He's a great guy, wouldn't you say, Sal? Sal would say, though it seems Sal is muted.
Yeah, he's become a good friend of the show, and you and I.
Yes, he has, for sure. And just so you know, his album you can buy digitally and own it digitally for $8, or you can buy it digitally and get a CD. And that will and actually there's anyway, whatever, it's $10 if you get both of those. So very, very easy. I'll send you to his link. But with that said, I'd like to share a song with you guys, and I think in order to do this, I can do this. Yes, I think I can do this. Let me try this. This is again live. So here we go. Okay, the first song I wanted you to hear is Vampire Friar, of course. Can you all hear that? And I'll share screen. Well, I don't need to really.
Sharing music on Zoom, though, is usually problematic because it doesn't.
It is, right? Well, we'll give it a try. People get the gist.
But after 700 years of drinking my labor, my heart was weighing heavy. Way I was behaving. But then the rest for all eternity. And think I wouldn't think for he who took the hit for me. So I started up the hearse and I drove to the church, ran into the bishop and ignored him up my curse. My beyond redemption because of my love for God. Forever remember to miss it just like Dr. God. He said my child is never too late to change your ways. I love the simplicity fire that's always a blaze. So I decided to repent of my lust and desires and live the rest of my cursed existence as a fire. I am a vampire, but no, I do not know food. I'm just drinking every day, but no variety. Every time I pray the rosary, my hands catch fire. Some of the brothers still cannot figure out why blessing me with holy water makes me shout. Wow! Doing everything I can to resist the urge to keep it down the vampire code. Lift up the Nicene Creed, sporting my brown habit, hanging up the black cape. From the dark lord's clutches, I'm making my escape. I can't see myself in the mirror, but I know that God sees me. Reflecting the teachings of St. Francis of Assisi. My hunger remains to get stronger every day. When I get the earth, I'm on my knees, and then I pray. Father, bright in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Lead me not into temptation to go see my bang. Surrender the face, it's all brother, for that matter, ready. Sleep all day, pray all night, but the sun is too bright. But I love Sister Moonlight. No longer feeding on the flesh, and I never drink wine unless it is the body and blood divine. It's forever since I had myself some typo. Gonna fast until I finally up and die, bro. It's getting harder trying to resist my undead urges. Just yesterday I tried to nibble on my homie Sturgis. What happens if I fall and make someone my dinner? Release love, have mercy on a blood-sucking nocturnal sinner. The lust is taking over and my body is shaking. Can't even hear about the blood of Christ that's elevating. And right as I am being it couldn't get worse. So that the friary was looking for a Baptist church. That was nothing wrong in the burn in hell. But God only loves from the medium well. My neighbor heard about the hate that they were advertising. Insulting hypocrites sounding pretty emphasizing. I said, Father, forgive me for I can't resist temptation to bit the neck of every member of their congregation. Sleep all day, pray all night, but the sun is too bright. But I love Sister Moonlight. No longer feeding on the flesh, and I never drink wine unless it is the body and blood divine. Sleep all day, pray all night, but the sun is too bright. But I love Sister Moonlight. No longer feeding on the flesh, and I never drink wine unless it is the body and blood divine.
It's nighttime, but it wasn't real. I was having a dinner.
the end of that. Oh wait, I gave my mom the wrong. Hold on one second, guys. So Sal, tell me what you think, or you know what, Chris, tell me what you think of that while I give my mom the right link to it.
Well, I mean, I have to confess that it's not the type of music that I would,
Of course,
naturally or voluntarily listen to. But what I find really, really amazingly intriguing is using that genre, in speaking about Christianity, speaking about the blood divine, it just kind of bringing out these ideas in that way. When growing up, I was not one that ever got into the Christian rock bands and this type of thing. Never got into any of that. But I always found it really interesting that there was always a group that really were.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I find really most intriguing about it, is how Christianity can really be brought into every single circle of people and type of people that exists. That's what I think is really interesting about it.
It really is, and the fact that he has had his own share. I mean, you can hear it in his music. People questioning, like his faith because of the way he dresses or the type of style he is or the music he. And what I love about that is he's unashamed, both of how he identifies, but also of his faith. And I mean, it is rock solid Orthodox faith. And ironically, since Vampire Friar was written, I personally know that Shane has actually joined an Orthodox church. So he's now not so Catholic, but he is Orthodox, which is still a part of the church Catholic, let's be honest.
And what kind of Orthodox church?
I want to say Eastern, but I'm not entirely sure. Or was it Greek Orthodox? I can't remember. Do you remember, Sal? It's one of those two.
Yeah, it's one of those two.
Yeah, it's one of those two. But yeah.
Well, there's Greek Orthodox, there's Syrian Orthodox, there's Armenian Orthodox, there's Romanian, Bulgarian, Russian. There's so many different variations.
It's definitely either Greek or Eastern, and for some reason I can't remember which one it is, but it's one of those two. And he just there were a number of reasons which I won't disclose here, but he just felt that his faith was calling him more in that direction, though he still felt very much an affinity to his Catholic faith. And of course, you can't get closer to Catholic than Orthodox, even though they're very different in a lot of ways too. But in terms of their the high church and all of that, I mean, he's finding himself at home there, at least now. So we have to find out. He wrote a book called Gotholic about his journey as a Gothic Catholic, and now we're gonna have to. I don't know if he's Gothlodox or I don't know what we're gonna have to. I was joking with him. We're gonna have to find him a cool title for his part 2 of that autobiographical journey there. So with that said, that was Vampire Friar. I'll give you something else, maybe a little bit more serious, and not that isn't serious, but he's playing on vampires and being Christian and all of that. But I'll give you something a little more transparent, I guess, to something going on in his life in the past that he tells about in the song. So he's a great artist. I really love the guy. We miss you, Reverend Leviathan, who from now on will be called the Vampire Friar. So the next time he's on. So okay, guys. So I guess tell me what your favorite things about Halloween horror, all things Halloween horror are, if they ever were, and then we'll go from there.
Why don't you go, Chris? You're the guest.
Yeah.
Don't make me get serious now.
I guess I would have to say that my favorite thing about Halloween is, of course, the candy.
Amen.
That's the thing that would certainly be on the top of my list. Yesterday, unbeknownst to my wife, I bought 3 bags of Halloween candy and have them in my nightstand next to my bed.
They're for your trick-or-treating in the middle of the night.
Yes, I lay in bed and I eat candy while I'm reading in bed.
I love you, Chris.
It's very, very bad, but and I get yelled at for it by my wife all the time, which I'm just going to have to keep it hidden from her.
I mean, that's all that equals, right?
That's all it equals. But there were, in thinking of this on this day about Halloween and thinking about, how to even think about Halloween. When I was growing up, I was not the kid that went out with the group of kids to go trick-or-treating or anything like that. My parents brought us, and then as we got older, we just kind of stopped doing that. And so it wasn't, something that was a really big part of my life. But I will say that when my kids were young, and we lived overseas for the majority of their childhood, but when we came back into the States, they'd never celebrated Halloween. They were 11 and 12 at that time. And so this was a brand new thing for them. And so we went absolutely all out and decorated the house that we were living in a very, very big way. And they got into the costumes and we went out for hours trick-or-treating. And they found it really exciting and wonderful. And so, I mean, people say, oh, well, Christmas is for children. And I think that Christmas is for everybody. And people will say, well, Halloween is for children, but I think it's for everybody. Just Agreed. If you can enjoy the joy that is in the children that are around you, if you're not celebrating it as an adult.
Yes. If you're not celebrating it as an adult and you want nothing to do with it, at least find joy in the kids who are loving it. Right. Yeah. Amen. And that's, for me, I guess what got me into Halloween is the theatrics of it. I don't know if you can tell that I'm a theatrical person. But I love the special effects of horror movies, and like just trying as a kid, I remember getting these little books. I don't know if you remember them, Sal. They had them in the libraries at school. They were like little young adult, or not even young adult. They're, I think, younger than that, but there are picture books about like the old horror movies, Boris, like Karloff's Frankenstein and Bela Lugosi and Mad Scientist and that. And I used to read those. I couldn't wait for the day where I was allowed to watch it. And then B, I used to read it because I would love looking at the pictures and reading about how they did the makeup, and then trying to emulate that, like see if I could make my own Frankenstein's monster. And so it's, now that I'm a 44-year-old adult dressed like Freddy and Jason all at once with this weird thing on. Actually, I look like I'm like some weird Freddy pilot at this point with these on. But the reason that is because I'm getting ready to be Jason at Blairstown, and at 44 years old to be able to do that and to scare other maybe older kids. Hopefully people aren't bringing their young little babies through, and if they do, I am a pastor, so I can counsel not only the kid who will need it but also the parents who should have it. but for the older kids who want to go get a good scare at Halloween time, and it's supporting a good cause, and I get to be me being somebody else, that's pretty awesome. So
in thinking about theatrics, there was one time I think 15 or 16 years old, and a friend of mine was really into the show Madam. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. Madam the puppet?
Yes, I do.
And he was really into the show Madam, and I thought it was okay and everything, and he really wanted to dress up as Madam for Halloween. And so he talked me into making Madam masks out of paper mache.
Wow.
And so we made these masks out of paper mache with the big nose for the Madam had and everything, and then dressed up for Halloween as Madam. We were both Madam for Halloween.
You were Madam twinsies. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Yes, I do remember Madam, and that also speaking of puppets and weird things, that would be like dressing up as Mr. Meow Meow or whatever from Fred Rogers is or one of those puppets, because they had those big noses too.
Oh,
Speaking of, I had to throw Fred Rogers in there. I feel like Fred Rogers loved Halloween, and I know he did, because I watched his show and he taught me about how to do some of those makeup effects on the Hulk, for instance. So good old Fred Rogers, good Presbyterian, PC USA. That's right.
yes. Yeah, he I don't think he could ever have been a PCA Presbyterian.
No, I don't think so. I don't think he could have been, or any other the other offshoots, EPC or whatever. And
Yeah, no, he was very much ahead of his time.
he was very ahead of his time. Yeah. And evidently he turned us all into a bunch of softy snowflakes, I guess. Or some older people say.
I can think of worse things to be.
Me too. And I can also say that that the snowflakes that have been made fun of in this end of young youth and generation, they actually have formed a blizzard, whereas the older people who like to call other snowflakes, they have proven themselves to be melty snowflakes, worse than any I've ever seen through history. So the irony, I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah.
We can say a lot about the youth. We can say it was mostly not the youth who stormed the Capitol, and I'll just leave it there.
Yeah.
Who knew? But with that said, yes. So, do you have a favorite? And Sal, I'm assuming is off taking care of baby, because that happens as a father. We've been there, haven't we, Chris?
Oh, we have.
Yes. So, do you have a favorite horror movie? Were you ever into horror movies at all, or even early horror movies?
I was never into horror movies. However, the only horror movie that ever scared me was Halloween 2. I'm thinking about Jason.
Mm-hmm.
I was I'm not sure how old I was, 13 maybe. And my parents had gone to our neighbor's house for a Halloween party, and my sister had gone out with her friends. And I was at home alone on Halloween night with my dog.
Oh, wow.
And I went and I thought it would be a wonderful idea to watch Halloween 2. And so
on Halloween. Why not?
Halloween. And so I sat in the dark of our living room. All of the rest of the lights in the house were off. Watched Halloween. And I have never, ever been so scared in my entire life. Every time you would hear absolutely anything, you turn your head and you're getting paranoid about Jason coming down the hallway with a machete wanting to kill you. And I swear to God, I know I had
in Halloween 2
into my pants that night.
In Halloween 2 with and it's Michael Myers, you said Jason, but
sorry,
what's the Michael difference? He had a machete. He had a lot of things in that movie, actually.
I cannot get out of my head the scene in the hospital.
Which one? The hot tub scene?
Well, it was when they were in the hot tub, but then he went and he killed somebody, and the blood just was like
all over
the place. And I just, oh my gosh, I was watching that film, and I swear I was putting a load in my pants.
Halloween is my favorite franchise ever, though. First off, Halloween 3, like, come on. Just call it something else. It has nothing to do with the series. But anyway, Halloween 4 and Halloween 5 were okay, but Halloween 5 started to take this turn. They kind of did what I feel like, if you remember Tim Burton's Batman movies, like they were kind of serious, that Tim Burton vision to it. And then Joel Schumacher came in and said, let's make this campy. And it's like, but that's not what made it work. Why would you do that? Anyway, I feel like they did that in that series a bit, but the first two movies, the first is obviously the first, but I dare you find a scarier sequel. Well, maybe I'd be wrong about this, but I dare you find many more scarier sequels than Halloween 2. That's a pretty, even still watching it, and I know where all the scares are, it still gets me. It's one of those films.
Yeah, that's like I said, that's the only film that's ever scared me. However, I will also add that I have had some serious nightmares coming out of the movie The Exorcist.
The Exorcist, like the first one.
Yeah,
Oh, that'll do it too, especially director's cut.
Yeah, The Exorcist was pretty profound in a lot of ways. But then, did you ever see The Exorcism of Emily Rose?
I love that film, and that's,
Oh boy,
to me, it's horror, but it's horror in a way that brings you deeper into the things you can't see and understand, and it is based on a real case, though they changed some details for obvious reasons, but yeah.
Yeah, that's a keeper.
And then very little makeup in it. It was mostly just her acting and contorting, and just her. It was mostly her. Unbelievable.
Yeah. And I would, of course, be, remiss if I did not mention The Shining.
Oh, The Shining. By the way, I don't know if I told you this. I think I did. But my wife, my daughters, and I all got to visit the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, which is, of course, the inspiration for The Shining.
When you were out there this summer?
Yes. We took the tour, the late night ghost tour, and it was awesome. I'm not going to lie. Really, really awesome. Sounds like Sal had to get off, which is sad. Maybe he'll come back, maybe not. Or maybe it's an internet issue. Who knows? But it is you and I. It is you and I holding the party up. That's right. Now let me quickly check and see if anybody is interacting with us. Not that I see on Facebook. And that also depends on how many people were able to come out, and that's fine, because also it will be there beyond, and people can just watch it, and we're having a grand old time, you and I, at least Chris, and I know Sal was, and Blake is off to La La Land and Valhalla somewhere. Got to keep the Viking theme going. But I'll tell you a story that one of the scariest movie experiences I ever had. And it was a movie I had already seen, and I was showing my mother-in-law. And it's I don't know if you've heard of it. It's by Richard Matheson, I think that's his name, who also wrote Hell House, another novel. He was an author. But the movie is called Stir of Echoes. It's
I've never heard of it.
Kevin Bacon. Speaking of Friday the 13th fames, Kevin Bacon was kill number 2 or 3, I believe. I think he was kill number 2 in Halloween. He gets to have the gratuitous sex scene, or not Halloween, in Friday the 13th, the original. He's on the bunk bed having the gratuitous sex scene when an arrow goes through his throat.
Okay.
That was his debut in film, and since then he's had a lot better parts.
That was his debut in film.
That was his debut in film.
What about Animal House?
It was Kevin Bacon in Animal House?
Yeah.
But
very young Kevin Bacon.
What year was that made? Do you know?
I would have to look it up. I shall do exactly that right now.
That's a good question. I believe that's his debut in film. But if he was in Animal House, then no, that was not his debut in film.
Animal House was 1978.
78, yeah. But maybe that was his debut in a lead part, then we'll put it that way.
Okay.
If he was a young, nobody in that movie, he became somebody.
Yeah, he pretty much was a young nobody.
Yeah. So then that was his first debut lead part person, though it wasn't a very long-lived lead part. He did a great death, though. It was a great death. Anyway, back to Kevin Bacon and Stir of Echoes. We were up in Cape Cod in Eastham, where my grandfather, actually at that time it was actually my grandfather's new house. It was in Orleans in Cape Cod, but he lived there, and he was not there at the time, but we were staying at the house on vacation, and me, my wife, and my mother-in-law decided we're going to sit down and watch Stir of Echoes, because she had never seen it. And it's a really, really good film. If you haven't seen it, it deals with a lot of really harsh issues, and it's a ghost story that points to a tragedy that should have never happened and leads to justice. So it's a good film, but it's horror. And as we're watching it, And like those parts where like things would get silent and there's like that, something's coming up, and all of a sudden we hear whack into the window. We're like, but it wasn't the TV, it was the window. And it turned out to be June bugs flying in because they saw the light and they were flying into the window. But the scares were actually, even though the movie itself was also scaring us, the extra scares were coming from outside, which was a most interesting 4D horror experience I've ever had. Yes.
Well, when it comes to horror, though, I've never been one really into the blood and guts and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and even the Halloween movies. What inspired me to watch Halloween 2 at home alone with all of the lights out on Halloween? I have absolutely no idea. But the movies that I always found after that one that really I found really instilled fear.
Yeah.
Much more were really more the psychological things, like The Exorcism, like The Shining. Cape Fear was another one.
Cape Fear is a great horror film.
Cape Fear,
and it is a horror film.
Just horrible. It really, it just really makes you.
They call it a thriller, but it really is a horror film.
Oh,
it really is.
Yeah,
Cape Fear. De Niro.
Yeah, he in that movie was just amazing.
And he was excellent. I don't know if you ever saw, I love the classic horror films. Not that I have them on my sleeve or anything, but I don't know if you saw Mary Shelley's Frankenstein by Kenneth Branagh.
Yeah.
But De Niro's performance in that as that monster, we all talk about Boris Karloff, and yes, Boris Karloff was, he'll quintessentially be Frankenstein forever. So he's in another class, but really, I think De Niro's performance is so underrated as that monster because he brought every human emotion into that. You could not look at that monster as anything but a human being. And in fact, it was Victor Frankenstein who was the monster. And that became clearer. It's clear when you read the story, though it's a little more nuanced in the novel. In the film, Branagh really did good at making Victor Frankenstein the questionable guy.
I'm going to have to go back and rewatch that. I did see it, but it's been a very long time, and I can't really remember it very well.
Yeah, and it's the story of the maker who abandons the maid.
Yeah,
the creator who abandons the creation, and then leaves the creation for dead. And then the creation, it is a self-aware being that learns not only about who he is, and not only to himself, but how other people relate to him, but also who he is in relation to the one who just left him there. So it's horror at its greatest. And Mary Shelley, speaking of somebody who was way ahead of her time in the 1700s writing that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, she's just and at 18 or 19 years old, I think she was when she wrote it.
I know she was young. I have a copy of it on my shelf.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 18 or 19 she was. So that's just impressive. Cool. Well, so what would you say? Have you ever read any horror novels?
Well, maybe I read The Exorcism, of course.
Yes.
And the book is far more exciting and incredible than the movie ever was.
Than the movie, absolutely. Oh, yeah, William Peter Blady's.
And it's, of course, that's usually the case, but The Exorcism is certainly a really good example. There have been some other books that I've read that would probably be along the lines of horror, but not really too much. I'm really much more of a historical person.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
No, that makes perfect sense. So, and actually there's some really good I would say there's really good horror. Sal is clearly still I think Sal may be still listening because he's like, and baby just did an exorcist on me. Sal, we are praying for you, sir. If you can hear us, give us a thumbs up give me a thumbs up in the text and I'll let everybody know you're listening in. But like I said, I kind of figured he was on baby daddy. No, he was not on that duty. He was on daddy baby duty. Now you can understand why my kids are like, Dad, are you really coming? I remember, though, I was able to prove to my kids one time I was going to meet a colleague and a friend, and I said, oh, yeah, me and so-and-so are going to hook up. And my daughter's like, but you're married. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, but you can't have sex with somebody else who's married. And I'm like, I said, I'm hooking up with them. I didn't say having. They're like, but that's what that means. I found proof. And it was in Scream, where I think it was Scream. It was somewhere where they're like, oh, yeah, call me. We'll hook up later. I'm like, see, that phrase did not always mean that, damn it.
No, it didn't always mean that at all. I mean, in my younger years, hook up with something meant you were going to meet up with them.
I hooked up with plenty of friends, and it didn't mean anything salacious.
Yeah, but just as people change and times change, so does language.
So I learned not to say hooked up, but obviously baby daddy has not gotten across the brainwaves yet. So, well, I would say that my favorite horror novel of all time is Bram Stoker's Dracula. There's a lot to like about Bram Stoker. There's a lot not to like about Bram Stoker, just like every human being. But I thought what he did in that novel was particularly ahead of his time, especially being a man who was kind of, he believed in eugenics like a lot of people of his times and other things that were kind of questionable. But at the same time, he wrote this novel about a woman, a repressed woman on that in English culture, who somehow becomes the heroine of the story. Because really, without her, there would have been no way they caught Dracula. Like, she was the one that outwitted Dracula. They were the ones that kind of rode her coattails to victory. And it's like, I just love that. I love when an author can just like step outside of his own box and just write something that's like, whoa, and so Dracula stands the test of time. Frankenstein stands the test of time. And Stephen King's Shining stands the test of time.
Yeah, sure. I've read The Shining also.
Yeah, The Shining is a great book. And now I'm rereading it now, having been at the actual, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm seeing this now. I get this. I get the setting. Like, he sets it up very, very just as it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when you're in the Rocky Mountains at an altitude above the Stanley Hotel and you can see it in the distance down below, you get an even bigger sense of how isolated it is. It's like, whoa, there's a big town there, but nobody's there in the winter. It's a ghost town. So I can just imagine being in that hotel and having to let alone the ghost stories and all of that, but just being there alone with the howling winds and forget it.
Yeah. Well, how do you feel about ghosts? Or spirits
well, I look at it this way. When the disciples looked across the water and saw Jesus walking, they thought he was a ghost. So ghosts have been around as long as humanity has, and I can't deny them any more than, I witnessed ghosts. There are times I've felt like I may have, but I don't know enough for sure to say I have. So I still remain like maybe with a dose of healthy skepticism about it. But at the same time, I say that I do overall believe in them, because why am I so arrogant to think that my experience trumps millions of years of human experience? So that's where I am on it.
When I'll tell you a story. When we were living in Bethlehem, my wife is from Bethlehem and not Pennsylvania. But when we were living in Bethlehem for the first 5 years of our marriage, and we were there, I was there from 94 until 2001. And at the 2000 celebrations, because Bethlehem was going to be celebrating the 2000 years of Christianity. And so lots of international organizations, UN, Japanese government, USAID, the European Union, all of these groups were coming in, and they were fixing up the town of Bethlehem. And they were putting in new sewage, new water, and new electric, and all of this great stuff, which was very, very much desperately needed, because none of that infrastructure work had been done since the 1960s. And so part of their plan was to completely renovate Manger Square. Now, Manger Square, you've got the Church of the Nativity, which is a massive structure. And then in front of the Church of the Nativity, you have Manger Square.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, when I first went there, it was a great big black topped bus parking lot, essentially, where people were coming and going all the time and whatnot. But for the 2000th anniversary celebrations, they were going to do this renovation. They took up all of the blacktop, and they put down cobblestone and everything. But after they took up all of the blacktop, they take it all up. They exposed, obviously, what was underneath that blacktop. In front of the Church of the Nativity in Manger Square, it used to be a cemetery.
Oh.
And so when they opened up all of that, they were exposing the cemetery.
Oh, wow.
And I remember very vividly walking through Manger Square at that time and being able to see skeletons sticking up out of the ground.
Oh.
And at that time, lots of very, very freaky things were happening in Bethlehem. And one time we were sitting in our kitchen, we were eating breakfast, and we were seeing like people walking past our window. Okay, and we had frosted glass on this window in the kitchen, but there's people walking by. I'm like, who are all of these people? And I got up and I went outside, but there was nobody there.
Oh, man.
And then literally a couple days after that, I walked into my son's bedroom, and he was sitting on his bed and he was laughing and just having the grandest time. And I was like, what are you laughing at? He was in the room by himself.
Mm-hmm.
I said, what are you laughing at? And he's like, oh, they're making me laugh. And he pointed up, and there was nothing there.
Oh, my God.
So, as soon as they covered that back up and put the cobblestone back up, put the cobblestone down, rather, all of those types of things ceased to happen.
Yeah. And I think there are too many stories like that in the world for it to not be true. That's what I think. I mean, you can be a skeptic and like not believe every story you hear. That's one thing, but to just completely discount it is about as foolish, in my opinion, as discounting God exists when no matter what God you think exists, billions and billions and billions of people over millions of years have believed this to the death. So there's got to be something to it.
Yeah, I think there definitely does. When we lived in Iowa, we lived in a great big old Victorian that had been built in 1873, and I know that our landlady, she owned the house that had been built for her grandfather when he got married. And we moved in there, and the radios would go on in the middle of the night all the time, the television on occasion. One evening we were laying in bed, my wife and I, and the boys come in, and they're just like, there's somebody up in the attic. I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, there's somebody up in the attic. And so I went into their room, and I'm listening, and I'm hearing footsteps up above their room in the attic. And I was like, oh my God, and so I get my flashlight and I open up that door and I go up, and there's absolutely nothing there. I was thinking maybe there's a raccoon or something like that, but there was absolutely nothing. All the windows were completely closed. So, for me personally, to say that there's nothing to it,
it doesn't make sense to me. I've seen too many. There are too many other weirder things out there for that to not be like there be some truth to it. Yeah. That's my opinion. And the same thing with I know like in academia we can all get all very academic about like demon possession and those things. I'm not saying that everything that's called a demon possession is, but by God, it's been around for far longer than me for me to say, oh, it can't be true. And by the way, I've seen enough weird things to say, yes, it can be.
Yeah, for sure.
Epilepsy does not explain everything away.
No.
So, and that's just, I think as pastors, that's, I think we're not all pastors maybe, but I think most are open to that because we get we are frequented with weird things that are just, that go beyond the pale. Yeah. So, including people seeking exorcism. I know of somebody who's a dear friend of mine who had somebody approach them about exorcism. And, you know, contrary to popular belief, that's not necessarily like a 101 class in seminary. In fact, I don't think it's a top tier class either.
Or a class at all.
Or a class at all. Right. And if it is, tell me where. I want to take it. So, but no, seriously.
Yeah, I know a few people in my congregation that need exorcisms, actually. So. But I would also have to counter that probably most pastors do have at least one or two that could use an exorcism in their congregation.
Of course. And then there are some pastors who sometimes may inadvertently need an exorcism themselves. So.
Yeah, I know absolutely no doubt about that one.
There's no doubt about that too. So exorcism all around. Oh boy. Well, hopefully it doesn't end as crazy as it did for Sal and the pea soup that I'm sure he had to clean up. Mm-hmm. Well, I tried to coax my mom into coming on because she was watching and she was engaging, but I doubt she will. She's like, yeah, no. So, hi, Mom. But with that said, I guess we are at a point now, Chris, where I think we have exhausted Halloween for this year. Okay. I don't know that we can ever exhaust it, honestly. But yeah, so thank you for tuning in. And before we go, I just want to deliver what I promised, which is the next song that I was going to share tonight. And then we'll say our final goodbyes, and that'll be it. So let's listen to, and I have to find where it is now because, you know, here we are. Let's listen to, and we'll just play Something Equals. You know what? Actually, I think what I'm going to do is, yes, the Rev. That's what I'll do. I'll do the Rev.
Always amongst us. Stay back, boy. This calls for divine intervention. Always telling me that I'm weird as hell. They be thinking I'm on more crack than the Liberty Bell. Ever since I was a kid, my personality caused fright like bodies will. I was king of hearing that boy ain't right. Like sheep with the family, yet no peeps understanding me. Call me creepy when damning me, cause I'm deep in insanity. I belong in the crazy, you think I'm wrong, it don't faze me. It won't be long till they praise me. After this song, they'll embrace me. Always been attracted to what's different than not. I got the one thing staring at me saying, oh my god. Just a Catholic gothic juggalo metalhead weirdo, silencing my haters and making noise for your ear hole. This is who I am and I am not apologizing. I don't care if you don't like my method of evangelizing. Counted among the wicked and caring for the sick. My homies call me the Rev, my haters are heretic. I was put on this earth to spread the laughter and peace. I'm doing everything I can to make the hatred decrease, because I know the feeling of being unloved all too well. Goddamn these negative emotions to the bottom of hell. Gonna bring you a smile as I be singing my style. It's been my thing for a while to show my king isn't vile. I'm like a pro mix with the dove trying to sow. My seeds of love came down below from up above, so they will know us by our love. Not ashamed of my faith, I will proclaim it till the last day. Meditating 2 vials of red as I pray. But I ain't out here screaming scripture at sinners like we are rivals. I prefer to be a Christian, not a douchebag with the Bible. This is who I am and I am not apologizing. I don't care.
I love that line.
My method of evangelizing, counted among the wicked and caring for the sick. My homies call me the Rev.
No offense, but we know plenty of douchebags with Bibles.
Those who got the horror conventions already ran with the paranormal recruitment intervention. Interviewing artists and entertainers is what I do. Girls, XL Dweller, AXC, and Doyle, to name a few. So I'm new to the rap game and the you that might sound lame, but I use it to ease pain, love of music and not fame. We're so alive, the subs average shows the inspiring the music. We're so divine as the peaceful thoughts fill the mind. Tunes have always been my therapy and method to cope. And those who want me to fail, y'all are just hoping it gets hope. Cause there ain't no way in hell that my style won't gonna flop. Love to my homie Buckshot. Hey, look, another name drop. This is who I am and I am not apologizing. I don't care if you don't like my method of evangelizing. Counted among the wicked and caring for the sick. My homies call me the Rev, my haters are heretic. This is who I am and I am not apologizing. I don't care if you don't like my method of evangelizing. Counted among the wicked and caring for the sick. My homies call me the Rev, my haters are heretic.
I I just have to say I love his I love the samples he puts in there. I'm gonna kick ass for the Lord. Anyway, but you know, he has other tracks on there like Mommy Dearest, where he talks about his mom who was a drug addict who ended up dying of an overdose. So like there's some real serious and deep stuff on there, and then there's some like, you know, some more like I don't know, I guess upbeat would be the word. More upbeat tunes like the last one we heard, where it's more like, hey, this is who I am and this is what I'm going to do, and you don't have to like it. Or Gothic for Life, you know, I love that song. That song and starts off like Sir Mix-a-Lot's Baby Got Back. You remember that song? Oh my God, look at those butts. Do you remember that song in the 80s or early 90s, was it?
If it was early 90s, it's not familiar to me, but I missed all of the 90s. So
if you go and listen to that song and then go and listen to his Gothic for Life, the rest of the song sounds nothing like it, but the opening is definitely like him just kind of riffing on Sir Mix-a-Lot's opening. But they're like, oh my God, look at those goths. And it's like the Valley Girl sound. I mean, it's just,
well, I was just going to say the only thing that even sounds familiar to me was what was her name? It was Frank Zappa's daughter. She did Valley Girl in the 1980s.
Yes. That's very much like that. Yep. Yeah. Which I wouldn't doubt Sir Mix-a-Lot was probably riffing on. So the riff continues.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, with that said, it has been rocking and most excellent to have you on, to have Sal on, and to have Blake on in spirit. And I hope you all have a most excellent Halloween. And with that said, I will say be excellent to each other. And to fill in for Sal, don't be a jerk. Rock on.
Be good and do good.
Be good and do good. Amen. Couldn't say it better. Thank you for joining, and thank you, Chris, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And hanging all the way there. Oh, you are a trooper, man.